Here.
Griffin, Harrison, Harsh,
Present.
Starr.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We officially call the Mayor's Appointment Committee to order, and we will start out with Community Relations Board, which we have 5 candidates: Mrs. Pelliot, Westbrook, Lucas, Muhammad, and Render III. Come on up.
Oh, come up. Yeah, we'll do all.
Say this is group.
All right.
And then we also have from the audience, we have testimony from the audience. We're going to allow Mr. C to come up before we open up.
Yeah.
And if we have anybody else that wants to have public comments, we'll put this paper back and then you can have them fill it out. Thank you.
These are automatically activated, so you don't do anything. Just talk into it.
And how we will proceed, we will open with public comments and then we'll go right on down the line.
Okay.
And so that the committee that's established here today, Mr. Roland Muhammad could not be here today. He is a reappointment to the Community Relations Board. In addition to Reverend Charles Lucas, who's at a convention, he is also a reappointment. I know both of these gentlemen. They're outstanding leaders in the community for well over 50 years in the city of Cleveland, and we appreciate the fact that that they are being reappointed, and if there's no unreadiness with the committee, I'd like to approve them with the 3 that's here today. Do we have any unreadiness on those 2? Okay. Seeing no unreadiness, I'd like to open it up, Mr. C, with opening statements coming from the community.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for allowing me just a moment to share some thoughts that I have. Thanks to you and to the committee. And before those remarks, let me say I want to thank you and the other members of council for your continued service to this community. We are fortunate to have members of council like yourselves that spend the time that you spend on behalf of the citizens of Cleveland. So we thank you, and we thank you and your families for your service. I'm here just a moment to offer my unsolicited support for the new appointments of Mr. J. Westbrook and Mr. Robert Render. And Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to underscore your remarks regarding the other members that you mentioned in terms of their years of distinguished service to this committee. Some of the newer appointments I do not know, but what I have heard, just in brief passing, I also support those nominations because those appear to be distinguished citizens in this community as well. Thank you so much for allowing me to make these few comments. The election or appointment of these persons to that committee will serve this citizens of this city quite well. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Mr. C, for your kind words to the committee and for your thoughtfulness for being in the city of Cleveland and the service you have rendered to the citizens of the city of Cleveland. We're thankful also for your community service, and we appreciate your comments this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to proceed. We'll go with Mr. Render, and then we'll come right on over. If you'd tell a little bit about yourselves, why you seek to be on the Community Relations Board here in the city of Cleveland, and how you like to serve.
Thank you, Councilman. Presently, I'm serving as a precinct committeeman, 6T, for succeeding the late, great Dorothy Miller, and many of you know. Also, I'm serving as the street club president on 128th Street. We certainly have distinguished ourselves over the years of being in model streets. Community activists, worked at the Cleveland Public Library, and Charles and I go back a long ways when I worked for Lutheran Metro Ministry doing outreach work. Worked at the Cleveland Public Library for about 10 years.
Speak up a little bit more,
Oh.
because you've got a lot to talk about. And
Worked at the Western Reserve Historical Society. And I think that was where I really began to understand the important significance of African American history under the tutelage of the late Dr. Booker T. Tall. who I met after I got out of the service from the Air Force and started taking classes at Tri-C, and he had established a Black Studies program there. He was also, we worked with him, it was Clarence Fitch, Carol Bugg, Glenn Brackens, myself worked with Booker for 8 years to establish what is now the African American Cultural Gardens.
Okay.
It took that long to solicit and galvanize the community behind that because there was pushback from a lot of folks, and it was finally done under I think George Forbes was the council president. The council approved those 4 acres of what we know now as the African American Cultural Gardens. I think it was dedicated October 23rd, 1977.
Wow.
Booker took me over to the Historical Society. I spent 10 years over there, and like I said, that really was eye-opening because I didn't know that much about our own Black history, and I just got immersed in the significance and the contributions that Black folks have done in this city that impacted the city, the county, the state, and nationally. So I'm still out here doing God's work, as you might call it. I'm working on trying to get a stamp recognized by the United States Postal Service in honor of Caramu. Working with the council president in terms of and the Historical Society on some historical markers in Fairfax of all these iconic figures that have come out of Fairfax. And working on a project now with the Historical Society, Caramu, and Lakeview Cemetery to actually put a befitting memorial in honor of Carl Stokes. You know, right now there's just that little headstone. So we want to do something much more significant, finish his papers at the Historical Society being processed, and make a contribution to the Stokes Room at the Caramu House. So I'm still out here doing good trouble, as John Lewis would say.
Well, you have Mr. Render, you have a very extensive engagement in the community. To see that you are the secretary of the Fair Housing Board starting in 2014, and you still presently represent in that capacity, is that correct?
Yes.
And you are founder and co-chairperson of the Buckeye Larchmere Shaker Square Public Safety and Security Coalition.
That is
correct. Are you
correct.
still presently serving there?
Yes, yes I am.
And you also, you're the co-chair of the Safety and Security Committee at Shaker Square Alliance at the Moreland Group. Are you still holding that title?
Yes, I am.
And you are the member of the Mayor's Task Force on the African American Cultural Garden. Are you still holding that spot?
That has since been disbanded.
Okay, thank you. And you're the founder and co-chair of the Buckeye Area Community Action Council?
That is correct.
Right. So how do you do it all, and how do you gonna have some time to now serve on this committee with all these lofty titles?
You find time for the things you really want to do.
Are you retired?
Semi.
Semi-retired?
Yes.
Well, we're honored to have you to be a candidate to serve on the Community Relations Board, and I will open it up to the committee if you have any questions. Chair, recognize President of Cleveland City Council, Blaine Griffin.
Thank you. Sorry for being late, Mr. Chair. I would just tell you that I've worked extensively with Mr. Render throughout the years. He's a precinct committee person in the Ward 6 area. He has also worked with me on a lot of safety initiatives and other things in the community, and I support this appointment.
Okay. Not hearing any other questions from the committee will rest on Mr. Render and then move to the former president of Cleveland City Council, Jay Westbrook. Yeah.
I had to get up early to tie the tie, actually.
When I picked him up this morning, I said, boy, you look spiffy.
I know. Well, it's due back at the funeral home at 3, so Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, and Mr. President. And I would definitely, in case he needs to slip away for other things, Mr. Charles C., thank you for being here and saying a few words. I have to say that Charles and I knew each other when our hair was a bit darker, and but I've always admired the work he does with the Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. Actually, the person who married my wife and I, Ray Michelson, was a founding member of the Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries, and it's really a not fully or adequately recognized element in the heartbeat of the city of Cleveland. And please take that back to the wonderful spirits at the Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. A couple of things at a personal level. I'm not a native Clevelander. I served in a ward that had West Tech in it, and people often ask me if I graduated from West Tech, and I said, no, I didn't. I wasn't in charge of my direction or where I would live when I was in high school. And but had I been, I would have been a graduate of West Tech. And so I feel the same way about Cleveland. I wasn't in charge of where I was born or where I grew up. That happened to be in Arkansas. But most of my adult life since 1972 has been here in Cleveland. So Councilman Starr, I'm sure that predates your arrival on planet Earth. And so,
Mamas too.
so just just consider that I was here waiting for you to arrive. I have in my adult life come to have a great deal of respect for public service and just the basic notion of citizenship and what we treasure as a free country and a democracy is, as they often say, not free. It's the sacrifice of time, energy, effort, and sometimes the loneliness of speaking out when others say follow the crowd. And I have I've been in a position where I try to make thoughtful decisions about stands I take or directions I go, but nothing that I've done of any merit has been done on my own. It's been done with others. And as a councilman, I was privileged to serve the middle part of the west side of Cleveland. A couple of things that I think I broke some ground on was actually with community relations and with then Director Blaine Griffin on linking neighborhood safety with community development and the presence of community development organizations across the city being seeing safety as much of an important part of development as is bricks and mortar or concrete sidewalks or new paved streets. So we had a safety initiative in our community that worked hand in hand with community development and with the police department, also hand in hand with our housing organization, which is my other passion. And post retirement from the Cleveland Council, I've ended up showing that both sides of the city are vibrant places to live, and my wife and I moved to the Shaker Square neighborhood, where I've been deeply involved in housing issues and tenant justice. And we have pioneered work, I think, with the Morelands Group, which you've heard about because Bob Render is the leading part of the Morelands Group as well. We've pioneered a partnership between tenant rights and good, solid housing code enforcement. Tenants deserve to live in quality housing in order to push back on the, if you will, the greed of a lot of property owners who only want to take but not put back. We found that trying to tap into the strength of the city, the strength of the Building and Housing Department, to enforce the building codes of the city against property owners, multifamily property owners especially, is a powerful two-fisted punch, if you will, tenant and housing code together. So you might have heard some things about the Morelands Group. I've been privileged to be a part of that. The council president and Councilwoman Deborah Gray have been strong supporters. And I just one last word to my council people here in this august body that I was just telling about the remodeling of this room and the opening up of this room. It was almost like a tomb when I came here, and it's been open to the light of day and to the access of the public through cameras and transparency. And so you're definitely the People's Council, and I would be very honored to join the board of the Community Relations Department, which is the oldest community relations department in the country. Cleveland was the first, and just like I've said about public safety, community relations, the harmony of the community working together is a key ingredient of a strong community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mr. Westbrook. And you know, I'm looking here at your resume. You're so modest, and you almost. What you didn't say, probably what you should have said, especially for the members who are sitting here at the table who may not have the historical knowledge and information, is the factor that you laid the foundation to pass off on some of the most historical pieces in the city of Cleveland that set the foundation to where we are today. One of them is the explosion of housing development and new home development in the city of Cleveland, the passing off on legislation to make sure that we build a new Brown Stadium to keep our team here, the baseball stadium, the Jacobs, all of that development is because of your leadership in guiding the council and supporting those projects to create the firm foundation that we have, which we see future developments have been processed from that. And then just being a good elected official for your representation of your neighborhood. And it was always said when I first got in council over 25 years ago that you did a great job for your community, and the other person that was a lot of talk about was Mike Polensek and representing his neighborhood in that particular space and time. So I just wanted to give you kudos where those kudos should be, but I think one of the things that's lasting, at least in my mind, in terms of memory, is the fact that you made sure that the council institution stayed strong and committed to democracy. And that every council member coming down here, whether you agree with his or her philosophy or ideology, it didn't matter. You were in the process, that's the way they are, this is democracy. You may not like the way democracy is, but we're going to try to get consensus anyway from the group. And I think that as a leader, you were, with the exception of the president of Cleveland City Council we have now, Blaine Griffin, he's along that same vein. Allow for the members to have the opportunity to present themselves and as it relates to representing their people. And I'm so appreciative of that level of commitment that you gave to this institution and how you also protected this institution as the president of Cleveland City Council. So we're honored honored to have you here to grace us and with the knowledge and information that you have. I've often said it, and others have often said it. You're sort of an encyclopedia. So if we need to have information, we can always come to you, right?
Yes, sir.
And so,
I'll tell you something.
That's right. And want to open up the committee to any questions. The chair recognizes the Honorable Chris Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the chair, I don't know all the applicants today. As a matter of fact, I don't know any of them except for Jay Westbrook. And I can say from my own experience with Councilman Westbrook that the city of Cleveland is lucky to have somebody with as much breadth and depth of knowledge of our communities, both east and west side. I'm fortunate enough to have count as my constituents your former executive assistant, who's told me some of the stories about you two. And what I can say is that I know that Mr. Westbrook will approach this with the same compassion and respect for individuals that he has always demonstrated throughout his professional career. Something the Community Relations Board needs is people who understand people. And I feel very, very confident that you are that person. I'm grateful that you've stepped forward to take on this responsibility. Retirement might be more attractive without this, but I appreciate you putting in the work, and I'm very excited to support you today. So thank you for all your service and your continued work.
Thank you. Thank you.
We want to extend courtesy also to our last candidate, Mrs. Pellet, Ms. Luz Pellet.
Thank you, Chair Jones and members of council. My name is Luz Pedro, and wow, what an act to follow here. My goodness. I gotta lace up my shoes and get going here.
You don't have any snow on your roof.
Well, it's getting there. It's getting. I got a couple of flakes for sure. So yeah, I grew up in Northeast Ohio. My family came here from Puerto Rico. I was born here, first generation American, and spent most of my life there until after graduating from university. Then I came to Cleveland and spent many of my years working for Xerox Corporation, over 25 years now. And during that time, I started working from home in 2006. And so then I really didn't have a community, because of going to work and to the office and such. And so I was like, okay, so I went out and I sought it. So I started becoming members of different community groups, and then that resulted in becoming board members of those groups. For example, Plexus, which is the LGBT Chamber of Commerce here in Cleveland. I also became a board of governors for the Human Rights Campaign, and also their chair of their community engagement chair. I did the dinners that they hold here year over year that brings in 500 plus people to this gala to help raise monies for human rights. And I did those, and I did that for 3 years over and over, which not a lot of people do that, because it's like planning a wedding year over year over year. And it's like, so it is a lot. So nonetheless, I did that. And recently, my volunteerism spilled out to nonprofits. I'm a corporate person. I know nothing about nonprofits, but here I go. I'm like, let's try this out. And so I helped my partner develop a nonprofit called Graffiti Heart. Okay, and what we do is we do murals all over the city, and we raise monies for underserved youth for a 2-week program at Cleveland Institute of Art. And it's just not going to the actual classwork. It's actually being staying on campus, doing the work that these kids aren't sure that they want to do, but they have the passion, but maybe not the monies to get there. And so then that's what our nonprofit does. We're grassroots, total volunteer, and I'm the board secretary for Graffiti Heart there. And the second part of this, our mission, is we have street artists, mural artists, graffiti artists that, especially the graffiti artists that don't have an avenue to showcase their talents and their art. And it's normally done underground. It's an underground culture, of course, but we are fortunate enough to give them that opportunity to not only create destination areas, but also to get paid for their talent, to get paid for what they do. And so we also bring in international artists from all over. We're going to bring an artist from France, and that artist is going to collaborate with a local artist to do work here in the city of Cleveland. And so that's what we do. And
Are they, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
are they working with the city planning commission?
yeah, we do we do, how do you say, present to the Cleveland, the Planning Commission, and we also are working with Destination Cleveland.
And will the artist be doing murals?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, along with the local artists to.
I would love to see some of the artwork.
Oh, it's gonna be incredible. I can't wait for that. And so that's my volunteerism. And the reason why I'm here today is because I also served on the board of RTA. I just
Yes.
recently finished my term there. And I really enjoyed the work that RTA is doing, has been doing, and continues to do for the city of Cleveland. And I really was hands-on on that board. And when that term ended, I was presented with this opportunity, and I said, what a great fit, because most of my work is community engagement, community relations, volunteerism, and so here I am today.
Well, we certainly, the committee see you as a great piece to be added, Ms. Liu, to community relations. You certainly bring to the table some great assets from your work and your engagement and human rights campaign to your commitment and dedication to your neighborhood and your community, and your volunteerism speaks for itself. To the committee, I've had an opportunity to speak with this distinguished lady and have been very impressed, and I feel that she would make a great addition to community relations. And at this time, I'm going to open up to the board, and if they have any comments.
Thank you, Chair.
The board, seeing no further comments, we all approve of this addition to community relations. We're excited about you being added to community relations and what you bring. We have a lot of challenges in the city of Cleveland. We will need your dedication and your commitment and your engagement to be able to handle some of the most difficult things that are coming up within this city. And I can tell you right here, speaking on my behalf, all the time I've been on planet Earth, all the time I've been in existence, I have never seen the kind of things I'm seeing now. And it's almost, for me, uncharted territory. So I'm glad to have you here with a set of fresh eyes and a heart of commitment and dedication to give back to the citizens of the city of Cleveland. I'm going to open up to Mr. Starr before I close, but at this point, finding no other issues or unreadiness, this council is ready to proceed to recommend you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. Only point I would just want to make a reference is, I understand the work that Director Woodson as well as the whole team do in CRB, from JOCS to the JAC and to either the Briscoes. I think it's important that we also outline the fact that being a board member, we need that board activism. We need those relationships that you have in the community to help move things forward. There's a lot of great things that Director Woodson and our team are doing, but sometimes they need a little bit of help. And as board members, we don't need you to be a placeholder. We need you to be a change agent, but also connecting those resources to CRB so we can continue to grow. And I just want to make sure I put that point out for you all. I know you understand that point, but bring those great ideas. Bring not just the idea with it to the table, but also solutions to help us move forward. Director Woodson don't need no more work to be done. She need more people to lead, to take some things and take initiative. So as board members, we need that leadership, but also we need you to help us move our city forward. And I yield, Chair.
No, Mr. Distinguished Gentleman Starr, you hit it right on the nail. Angela Woodson is a great addition as the Director of Community Relations, and I agree and concur with you that she needs all the help that she can get. We appreciate the work that she does for our city, and this chair finding no unreadiness approve of these three individuals, the five that's in front of us approved to sit on the Community Relations Board.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You might want to still just shake the.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
who you are, why you want to sit on the commission, and I will open it up to ladies first. Mrs. Virginia Williams. Dr. Virginia Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Regina Williams. I am a native Clevelander, and I too believe that I was born before Councilman Starr. But I love this city and the people of Cleveland, and I love this view of the lake. It's really interesting. You can live and work here on America's North Coast and just look toward the horizon and expect that great things will happen in this city because of the work that we do. I was educated in the Cleveland Public Schools for the first 10 years of my educational journey, and then I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to attend Hawken Upper School. But throughout all of those years of my childhood, at least while I was in school, I lived on East 78th Street, just off Kinsman.
Okay.
And that was an interesting vantage point from which to view the world and know that even among those people who might be looked upon as being working class, sometimes lower class, but hardworking people, we could expect great things from them. I watched that neighborhood change, talk about buildings and landmarks. When we moved there in the early 1960s, there were all houses on that street, little frame houses, mostly 3-bedroom. And I watched half the neighborhood disappear. And I watched a lot of houses being torn down. And then a new city growing up around me, the Brick City, they called it, the projects, the Garden Valley neighborhood. Interesting experiment. They left a few of those frame houses. I'm glad ours was one of them right there on 78th Street. But those private homeowners were good neighbors to the people who were living in Brick City. It was just people, and we all went to school together. And we all, I think, made East 78th Street a very pleasant place for people to live and work and worship and also have interesting block parties in the summer. The house is gone now. Garden Valley looks a little different. The school I attended, Anton Gradina, that first one, it's gone. We've got a new Anton Gradina, however, in Garden Valley. The Garden Valley Neighborhood Center, still there, quite a landmark. The library that was on the first floor, gone. There's a new library across the street. So what I saw growing up in Cleveland, again, let me know that landmarks are important. That fire station that was at 79th Street when I was growing up, it's still there. It's an important anchor in the community. St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, across the street from the fire station, still there. The bar that was at 79th and Kinsman, gone. But there's some other great institutions that have come to take the places of those landmarks that have been removed. And so, again, not only were my K through 12 years here in Cleveland and my growing up years on 78th Street really pleasant, my post-secondary years were pleasant as well. And all of that education I secured here in the city of Cleveland, after Hawken Upper School, which is a little outside, Cleveland proper. I believe that's in Chesterland, Ohio. But I went to Cleveland State University. So the first four, the 2 bachelors, the 2 masters, those were earned at Cleveland State. The PhD I earned at Case Western Reserve. And so with my all Cleveland education, I've been able to see a lot of the world because I think we have great teachers here in the city of Cleveland who prepared me to be a 2-time Fulbright Scholar, who prepared me to travel and teach in Europe and also in Africa and also in Asia, come to think of it, in going to China. But again, when I say that among working class people, among black people in particular, again, that was my experience coming of age in the black community, worshiping in black churches, and then joining black community organizations, all black Girl Scout troop, all of those great things that happened for us on the east side of Cleveland opened the doors of opportunity for me. I want to see that happen again for more children in the city of Cleveland. I hope some of those landmarks that they are looking at now will be preserved. I hope that I can have a hand in making that happen as a member of the Landmarks Commission. I believe it takes brick and mortar, not as much as it takes people of goodwill, but it takes the brick and mortar buildings and other places in the city of Cleveland to preserve our history. Place matters, people matter. Profit matters too. I hope we have businesses that do well and employ those people who are going through the public schools now. But all of those things, I think, make for a viable city. And again, I want to be a part of the solution to some of those challenges, perhaps, that you alluded to earlier in making comments to some of the other folks who were in the room. But thank you very much for this opportunity. Right now, I'm at the Western Reserve Historical Society. We value the history. We value the manuscripts. We value the books. We value the articles, the publications. We also value those special places in the city.
Doctor, you have a very rich background, and elaborate a little bit about some of the 15 articles that you have authored and been a part of, and how they've made a difference.
Oh my, I didn't know you were going to be counting. Mostly everything that I have written about has been about the people of Cleveland. My dissertation looked at the experiences of black children in the public schools in the city of Cleveland from 1915, the year of the Cleveland Foundation survey, through approximately 1945, the end of World War II. I don't like war. I think it's a waste of human resources, but it was hard to talk about Cleveland's history without talking about and looking at the impact of war. So I ended up looking at the schools during the era of World War I and also during the era of the Great Depression, the 1920s and 30s, and also World War II. That in many ways lifted people out of that depressed economic state that we associate first and foremost with the stock market crash in 1929. So a lot of that in the dissertation, okay, that was approved by Case Western Reserve University. And then I took that walk across the stage and started to do a whole lot of teaching at Cleveland State University, where I was on the faculty for 23 years. And again, taking that primary research associated with the dissertation, turning that into book chapters, had the opportunity to write about a wonderful young man who graduated from Central High School. His name was James Mercer Langston Hughes. We just call him Langston Hughes. But inspired by other great Clevelanders like Charles Waddell Chestnut, who was a native Clevelander and didn't graduate from Central High School, but again, changed the literary landscape for the country, if not the world. And so those are two of the individuals, again, who got a lot of attention in the dissertation and my publications when it comes to looking at life here on America's North Coast. Other materials, well, I kind of like the first black woman who was elected to the Cleveland Board of Education, Mary Brown Martin, in 1929. I talk about her story and say that's good news in bad times. Yeah, we had the Depression. We had a black woman on the school board, right, who was trying to make life better for a lot of the children in the city of Cleveland. And at that time, as you know, it was not a majority minority school district. It was a majority white school district, and most of those children were the children of immigrants to the United States of America. So Cleveland has been a very diverse city for a very long time. I am never bored. As I said, all 15 of those articles, or at least 13 of them, were about the people of Cleveland. But some of them will also focus on the experiences of people in China and Nigeria and South Africa. And again, opportunities that I enjoyed because of the education that I got here in the city of Cleveland.
Well, I thank you for your comments. I have, to the body, had an opportunity to speak with you earlier. I'm very impressed with your background, your work, and I appreciate all that you do. I believe that you will make a great addition to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. And as chairman, I'm opening up the floor to my colleagues for any questions. Richard Starr, and then Councilman Chris Harsh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee, and Dr. Williams for being here and being nominated to the Landmarks Commission. I see Director Joyce is okay with this, so I'm definitely not going to oppose anything that Director is doing. I like the work that she do in her department, but I do want to ask just a couple of different questions, being that I am a graduate from Central Middle School, early 2000 when you came out with your PhD. One of the things I definitely, from a millennial standpoint, I know we're rough around the edges, us millennials, and we're very assertive and aggressive in our approach at times, even when we're not necessarily trying to be in that way. But when I come to Landmarks, I've been I've been getting my behind kicked about landmarks and sometimes my views on certain things. And what I mean by that is we had the old juvenile justice building that's in my ward, and we removed the landmark status, and we're looking to tear that building down. And a lot of folks that are never in my community, never been locked up like those individuals from my community that live on Cedar, that still walk past where they used to be locked up as a kid, wants it tore down, and others who study and research and write about it, talk about the historic presence. And to me, I just said, whatever, that is not, the history of a jail for me in my neighborhood is not something I ever want to have as somebody to see every day. If they was locked up in there walking past it every day, it's trauma. It could be a very bad experience for that individual. So my question would be from you, talking about landmarks. I also talk about another part that is not in my ward when I speak about the West Side Market, a building that was built early in the 1900s. But now I look at the fact that we're subsidizing $700,000 to operate in a building that quite frankly, and the model is not relevant today. You know, so from a person who loves landmarks and historic, through the chair, I would like to ask Dr. Williams, like, how do we find a common ground on things like that when you have me with this Baldwin Wallace MBA who understand analysis and saying, hey, if we subsidize $700,000 of anything, why do we put more money into this thing if it's not working this way? Just because we have a landmark, or because it's been around for so long, or do we explore other options to see if we can get a more broader understanding of what to do from those two examples that I would just say to the chair, to Dr. Williams? If you just check the comment.
Sure. Councilman Starr, I will, if I may, repeat what I said in my opening remarks. I value place. And some of those places, maybe it's just the ground that I walked on growing up in Garden Valley near 78th and Kinsman, or, you know, with the fire station at 79th, okay?
They moving that too?
The fire station?
Yeah, Council President is. Council President took it before I got in office, so I just want to let you know. I just want to make sure I put that on the record. So it's moving up the bridge.
Oh, okay.
So
But there will still be a fire station.
they're moving up the street.
Oh, near Garden Valley.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. But as I was saying, but place matters. Not necessarily that place, but we need those services in Ward 5.
Yes.
I don't live there anymore. I live in Ward 6, but we need fire stations in Ward 6.
Director Joyce, you see what I'm saying?
Oh, you're getting in trouble, Doctor.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go back to your question, because you asked for my comments about something else. And certainly places like the West Side Market, which I think is a great landmark. But here's something else about my childhood I didn't tell you. In the year that I was born, my parents were about your age, right? And they were founding members of the New Joshua Missionary Baptist Church, located at 7701 Central. You go there today, it's a vacant lot. But for many years, it was the center of cultural activities for that Missionary Baptist part of the city of Cleveland. That building had to be raised. That building had been condemned. That's what they had to do to get us out of there, right? Because we loved that place so much, but it wasn't safe. And so when you look at the people and the places, I think the top priority has to be preserving the lives of the people and the safety of the people. And now I think we can strike a balance. So here's something else that New Joshua did. A lot of people who migrated from the South, like my parents did from Arkansas, I think I heard Mr. Westbrook say that he had roots in Arkansas as well. But they came here and they engaged in this adaptive reuse of certain local landmarks. So the abandoned storefront became a storefront church. And so if we can look at, for example, the West Side Market, and say, okay, maybe it's not working so well as a market anymore, but put something else in that space that would generate additional revenue for the people of Cleveland, and perhaps bring more customers in for the people who want to maintain those vegetable stands and the meat stands and other things there. But I think there's a way, maybe put a restaurant in there or two, or a dance floor. And there's a lot of space in the West Side Market, but I think we can adaptively and creatively and collaboratively look at those spaces and change them slightly, or maybe in a major way, so that we do have that common ground that you talked about before. I think even in a space that has that much history, as far as the brick and mortar space is concerned, I think there is space for the new. I have grandchildren who are adults now, just graduated from high school. I like young people. And they see the world with different eyes, but I usually get, they're twins. Good job, Grandma. Both thumbs up, all right? When we find a way to make it possible for the older people and the young people to coexist, listen to different music, maybe eat different food, but to be in the same space and recognize that we're all part of the same community, if not the same family.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and that's all I had, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished Chairman Starr. The chair recognizes Councilman Chris Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Dr. Williams, I don't have much to add. You had me at North Coast. I appreciate it whenever somebody recognizes our geography correctly, and I cringe every time people refer to Cleveland as the Midwest. So, Dr. Williams, you had me when you refer to us as the North Coast, but then you went on. Your bio is incredibly impressive, and I'm just really grateful that you're stepping forward to assist the people of Cleveland in this capacity. I guess I'm wondering why we're nominating you for a 4-year term. We should just extend this to 2031 or whatever we can get out of you. But fantastic. Thank you for stepping forward and for offering your experience. Your knowledge of this city will help us tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. I presume the whole committee feels the same, and the chair will also recognize distinguished gentleman, President of Cleveland City Council, Blaine Griffin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And, what else would you expect from Ward 6 but excellence? So, Dr. Williams, appreciate you and glad that we have this opportunity to have a person of your caliber on the board. And I also want to say that I think that is great that we're actually diversifying the board. You'll get an opportunity to serve with our colleague who is passionately engaged in the Landmarks Committee. We talked over the weekend, Councilwoman Deborah Gray, and that's been one of the most exciting moments in her career thus far, is to serve on the Landmarks Committee, because she actually see how important and the impact that it has. The question that I have is, and I want to make sure I phrase it the right way. I have parts of this area where I want to almost demolish a lot of stuff because it's just lived past its useful life. But then I have areas like Little Italy, Hessler, and other folks where they're very diligent on what development and what things happen and what things are torn down in their area, especially in Little Italy, where some people would tell you it's been like feeding a baby a steak. Over the last 10 years, they've had development that has just been through the roof. And a lot of the older Italian enclave, which is the last Italian enclave in the city of Cleveland, is like we're being pushed out. So the two questions that I have for you is, how would you approach some of those historical districts like Little Italy and Hessler, number one? Number two, how do we look and identify beautiful, iconic structures, as Councilman Starr just mentioned, in some of the more deteriorated areas of the city, and really try to salvage those so that we can grow the communities around it? And then last but not least, how do we stop demolition by neglect? Because a lot of these folks, especially in some of these heightened areas, oftentimes let some of these buildings go into disrepair and then say, hey, we can't fix them up, they're no good anymore, we need to demolish them so a developer can come and redevelop. So those are a few things that I just wanted to ask. I'll reiterate them. How do we protect and look at areas like Little Italy, Hessler, other areas that are very iconic? How do we try to look at some of the deteriorated, more blighted areas in our city and identify some of those structures that we really want to save and work with Mr. Cullen and others? And then last but not least, how do we look at trying to use the landmarks to try to deal with demolition by neglect?
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for that three-part question. Yeah. But I think in looking, for example, at something like the Hessler Street and the Hessler Street Fair, which was such an important part, I think, of the culture, the festive nature of University Circle. Before we had Wade Oval Wednesdays, we had the Hessler Street Fair. I know that there are people right now who are still trying to preserve that sense of place and culture, and I see some construction right at the end of the street, right there on, what is that going to be, Ford?
Ford and Hessler.
Before you get to Euclid, yeah, I walk that way all the time.
Me and the director have spent a lot of time with that.
And so, again, people first. And certainly preserving that sense of community and place, I think we have to strike the balance. I like, that the street is paved with bricks, red bricks. I'm a Delta. That's my favorite color. And so I hope that somebody repairs that street when they finish the new construction on the corner. I think that will make a lot of people on Hessler very happy. But when I think about what can be salvaged and what has to go, like my childhood home, the frame house, where after we moved out, there was a fire. That home couldn't be saved. It breaks my heart when I see the vacant lot there. But I also see new homes, single-family homes being built in, that's Ward 5 too, 78th Street. Okay, yeah, especially on Colfax. So, but all of those things are important. But again, it's the anchor institutions. Okay, if we can go to 89th and Cedar for a while, one narrator called it the Boulevard of Broken Dreams for Black people. I like to call it the boulevard where a lot of people realize their dreams. And there are houses, there are beautiful homes and incredible houses of worship and places of business, and some of them are still there. So that's where that little skinny kid, Langston Hughes, lived, right off Cedar Avenue near about 84th Street.
86 in Cedar.
It was at 86, thank you. That's a landmark, I think, that house where he grew up and stayed in that attic room when his parents were in other cities looking for jobs. He was there for about 3 years until he graduated from Central High School, feeding himself, he said, boiling rice to a paste because he couldn't cook, but he could cook hot dogs. But anyway, there are churches there. The St. James African Methodist Episcopal Church is right at the end of that street, pretty much where Langston lived. And he had a lot of pleasant things to say about growing up in that neighborhood and kept coming back, as you know, to the city of Cleveland, especially to Kiramu House, which is also a landmark right there in Fairfax. My church, the Antioch Baptist Church, I almost said missionary, it is not, a different kind of Baptist church, right at 89th and Cedar. Another great landmark, and the members there invested a lot of money in preserving that church and repairing all kinds of wear and tear. It had been there for a long time. And Cattle Corner, as I wrap this up, the Boyd Funeral Home, also at 89. So again, if there are public-private partnerships that will make it possible for us to maintain those properties, to bring them up to code, I think that's going to be the key to the salvation of those communities. I don't believe in pushing people out of their home communities, but somehow, some of those benefits, some of those investments that we make available to larger institutions, somehow we have to make available through the Restoration Society or someone to those homeowners who want to stay where they have put down roots.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I could just have one other follow-up question. You bring up an interesting juxtaposition where there are some people that says that we got to be careful of not doing development by the loudest voices, but then at the same time, we have to balance making sure that the community does have voice and input. The Hessler is a very, very good example. I learned a lot through that process. We did have some community engagement, but there were times when we didn't agree. Their view of what that location, where that development was at, was different view than what others had. And trying to manage that tension is what you're going to get in a lot of the prime areas like Ohio City, Little Italy, Hessler, University Circle, Glenville, Fairfax, and others. So I really hope that we do get that community input, let that play into it, but at the same time, not just become susceptible to those loudest voices. But I'll end by saying this, you really got a great team. we were able to get a major plaque put into the Little Italy neighborhood recently. I just would love to see more African-American historical districts throughout the city that we identify. Councilman Starr is perfectly on point, where we need to identify some of those historical districts in Central and other places where we know that the seat of black culture in Cleveland migrated from. I don't care if you go to Lee Harvard, South Euclid, Solon. If you ask people where your mother or your grandmother or your aunt or uncle live, they would tell you down the way. They would tell you Central, and down the way is Central. So it's not these other. Am I right, Councilman? It's not Union Miles. It's Central. So just want to make sure that some of us say, oh, down the way is here or whatever. It's Central, and most people would tell you that they came from either down the way,
Right.
Glenville, or Huff. And we think we should preserve a lot more of those districts and do a lot more preservation. So thank you. I look forward to working with you, and congratulations to another great Ward 6 resident. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. The board wants to recognize Mr. Michael Sandberry. And now the floor is open up to you to tell us a little bit about who you are and how you will make an impact on the Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, my name is Mike Sandberry. Yep, sorry.
And it's good for you, Mr. Sandberry, because Dr. Regina Williams took up a lot of time, so you might just slide right on in.
I'll be a man of a few words.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my education is in architecture. My passion is in historic preservation of architecture. So I do have a degree in architecture. Through the work that I've done in the last 15 years in Northeast Ohio, I was working in Akron for about half that time and moved up to Cleveland for the other half.
Speak up a little bit.
I've worked on many landmark.
You have to project like Dr. Williams did, because she was just
Outside voices.
Yeah.
Okay. As a historic preservationist, I've worked on many of your landmarks, the Metzenbaum Courthouse. We worked on the Wade Park Bridge. A lot of these iconic buildings and features throughout Cleveland. I've also listed a couple on the National Register of Historic Places, and worked to preserve many of these buildings. And I think that sitting on this board is going to further that work that I've started. And I think it's definitely something that I feel strongly about, and hope to do more of that. I've sat on the neighborhood boards for the last 6 years, and I thoroughly enjoy that. I'm currently on the Ohio City board, and I think I have a wealth of knowledge on how to preserve buildings, save buildings, and keep the bones of Cleveland that we have alive.
And this is, just to kind of pull it out a little bit, this is pretty much what you do for a living.
It is,
Right.
yes. And
So you breathe this day in and day out.
I live in
This is just
it.
what you do.
I worked with Mr. Hirsch, I'm sorry. He helped me buy my house, and it was a dilapidated building and vacant for, I think, 10 years.
And where's your house located?
It's on Daisy in
Can
Clark
you tell
Fulton.
us about that 2900
Absolutely.
project that you worked on?
Yeah, we purchased it through Detroit Shoreway, and completely renovated it. I personally demolished all the renovations that had gone in the last 50 years that were not original to the building. Brought it back to the original layout. Put the dining room back in. It was split into an up-down unit, 2 units. Tore out all of the separating walls. Brought everything back to the historic character. Restored the original very intricate wood floors. Some stained glass windows. It's currently my residence. I've lived there for 5 years.
You're going to have to show us the before shots and after. And you got some awards for doing this.
Yes,
Tell us
we
about
did.
that.
So we got the Cleveland Restoration Society Award, and also Heritage Ohio, I think, award for best house renovation for 2020.
Impressive. Is there any questions from the floor? The chair recognizes distinguished gentleman Chris Harsh.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have to add here, because this was such an incredible project, the house is located across the street from the Applewood Center, which used to be the Home for Friendless Children, which is how they referred to a foster group home, friendless children, 100 years ago, which is sort of depressing, but it's under better use now. However, I discovered this house when I was the housing director at Metro West. We were part of the Detroit Shoreway, and the house was in bad shape. And so we rescued it through the county land bank. And Mr. Sandberry came in with a headlamp and a laser tape measure, equipment I had never seen in a home hunter. And I talked to his wife for a while he disappeared into the house and came back very dusty a few minutes later after having crawled through the attic and the basement to take all of his measurements. And there was decorative wood laid into the floor that was going underneath a wall. And I said, clearly this isn't, the way this room was designed. The woodwork wouldn't go underneath the wall. And he started pointing at the ceiling and pointing at the floor and said, well, this wall wasn't here, and this wall wasn't here, and this one was put in at some point. This was subdivided here, and this is what we got to take out. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's great. We're gonna get this house into the hands of somebody who wants to preserve it. And I'm very pleased, Mr. Chairman, to hear that 7 years later, they're raising a family there and still living in that house, because some people talk the talk, but it's harder to walk the walk. And I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad that he's still a resident of Daisy Avenue, having preserved. It's a beautiful workman's cottage, worker's cottage, I think or Foursquare cottage.
It's a Foursquare, yeah.
It's a Foursquare, okay.
Yep.
I'm not an architect, but it's a beautiful house, and I'm very, very glad that it's been preserved. And I can just say from experience that he's got passion for preservation and an eye for detail. So I'm happy that you're also stepping forward to be a part of this Landmarks Commission as well. That's all I have.
Well, it's really impressive what you did with this particular property. I see you even kept the actual stone that was originally put in there from the street walkway out to your property.
Anything that was original to the building, I will preserve it and save it.
And I do have one question though.
Sure.
How do you? Where's your driveway located? Do you have like?
I don't have a driveway. Yeah, I have alley access.
Alley access.
So there's a
Okay.
garage right on the alley.
Oh yeah, it's just really impressive. I see the.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a
lumber.
carriage house.
Yeah, I would presume this is it.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Nice house. Is there any further questions from my? I find you to be, as Dr. Regina Williams, to be a very impressive candidate. That this is what you do, and having you to sit on the City Planning Commission would give us a little bit more in-depth process, because you do this for a living, in addition to you rehabilitate stuff. So knowing how stuff mechanically works is really significantly important, especially when we talk about what buildings that are historical and that could potentially be saved, to have a set of eyes that know how to take a quick snap assessment as relates to what needs to be done to make a condition or bring a situation back in convey condition is really important. So this council doesn't find any unreadiness for approving Dr. William Regina, as well as approving Michael Sandberry for the open position here on the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about why you would feel to be a great candidate here to fill the spot of the City Planning Commission, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Sure. So my background is in landscape architecture. I graduated from Temple University in 2016. I hold about 5 to 6 years of design experience in professional practice, starting in Philadelphia, but then shortly after in Austin, Texas. I've worked a variety of scale of projects from large corporate campuses for companies like Google all the way to small cultural institutions and gardens. More recently, I came to Cleveland about 3 years ago as a Rose Landscape Architectural Fellow. It's a fellowship with the Enterprise Foundation, working directly with community development organizations. So I currently work at the organization called Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and work directly with the Cleveland CDCs on everything park-related and on planning. So that varies from, small projects, including the 5 Point Streetscapes project with the banners that went up in that neighborhood, all the way to being on boards and steering committees for things like the downtown lakefront plan. So I think my background, and again, an experience in public space and planning design will be a benefit to the Planning Commission, also representing, a specific demographic, including a young Black professional, renter in Cleveland, again, public space professional, and hopefully to not only be an advocate for designers coming in and scrutinizing their work, but also bolstering the design community here in Cleveland. I do work with the universities, both in town and then outside, including Kent, CUDC, CSU, and the Ohio State University as a lecturer as well. So again, a wealth of design experience both in the private and public and nonprofit sector.
I want to say to my colleagues, I've had an opportunity to interview with Andrew Sargent and find him to in some senses, not only be qualified, but almost overqualified. Having the opportunity not only to interview him, but also to see him work in our neighborhood and community planning has been really impressive, given the fact that he's also working with us in our neighborhood to put together a master plan for development in our area. And I just have no unreadiness for his approval. And I want to open up the floor to my colleagues. The chair recognizes distinguished gentleman Richard Starr from Ward 5.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Andrew, to the chair, I just have one question that I definitely would like to ask. What do you think the stance should be, or the collaboration should be, amongst community development corporations as well as the Cleveland City Council? I ask that because I received a lot of words about what CNP thinks, and it comes back to council all the times, like things should be changed or different. So I would like to ask, through the chair to you, what do you think the relationship or the role as far as CDCs should be as far as their participation and collaboration with the council?
So I'll kind of start globally and then work specifically in planning. So CNP is working on that right now and understanding what a CDC is responsible for. I think it's no secret to the council and to members of our organization that not all CDCs are made equal, and they all specialize and work in different areas. We're trying to come up with a core set of competencies that every CDC should be good at and should be able to execute. In regards to planning, we believe the CDC should function as core relationship drivers in regards to community engagement and facilitation of community neighborhood plans. I think beyond or predating my joining CNP, CDCs were generally responsible for a number of community plans within their neighborhoods, some comprehensive, looking at the entire neighborhood, some focusing on specific things, and lacking the necessary tools to actually implement those plans. We're moving towards a model where, again, hopefully we're working directly closely with the administration in not only getting the plans done, adopted, and implemented. Councilman Jones talk about the plan that we're currently working on with Lee Harvard. I think that's a good example of that kind of transition to where we're working directly with the CDC in bringing on that consultant and the councilman's office in, again, not only bringing on the consultant, working through the plan, but then also implementation after that plan is established.
And then, thank you to the chair. And with that being said, where's the collaboration? Because what I deal with is CMP telling these CDCs one thing, and then come to ask us for a vote and to prove something, and then you excluded me out the process. So my question is, what is it, one, what does CMP actually do? Because if they're getting all this money all these years, and our CDCs are still not producing, well, why do we keep funding CMP then, as a council through the chair?
Can I ask specifically what project you're speaking to?
Well, I have 5 CDCs.
Okay.
So within that being said is, CMP is telling them one thing, and it's completely opposite of what the council is looking for in a neighborhood that I serve. And what I mean by that is, not do serve, we live in these neighborhoods as well. So these outside people that possibly working with CMP, telling the CDC to do X, Y, and Z, and next you know our neighborhood still ain't developed. Because when I look at it from the lens of this, Community Development Corporation, not social service. I already have Friendly Inn. I already have University Settlement. I have those organizations. But then CMP is telling them the opposite things of me, and then they looking for the support from us to say, why are we giving it? Prime example, CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funding, those type of things. I look at it from the lens of, we would do a report on certain areas of the city to get a certain pot of money, but then we divide it equally around there. I'm talking about the equity. CMP is saying, well, this is what you should be doing. I understand this, but then the executive director of the CDC is like, well, the council person is asking me this. So it's like, how do we get CMP to understand what council matters? You know, like, we have a vote and we have a deciding factor of a budget that we allocate funding to get things done. Now, the administration administer things and do things from that standpoint, but it's like, hey, if the funder is like asking you to get this more development happening in my neighborhood and not trying to be the social service agency, I think that's no brainer that they should be working to a strategy to get those goals in place through the chair.
So I think it's a both and. I think one thing I should note is that CMP is under I think completely new management. We have undergone a strategic plan. I think in the last 2 years we have a new CEO that joined shortly after I joined the organization. About 2/3 of our organization is brand new. So we have new teams, new people. So maybe the reference to the CNP of the past is not the CNP of the future. We're looking for a much more collaborative environment with not only the CDCs, but of course council. In respect to how funding is allocated and where we see those priorities, as I mentioned, we're looking to, again, develop the core competency within CDCs, and that includes development strategies, right? So one of the things that we're looking forward to is making sure that there is real estate competency in all CDCs, and if CDCs cannot house that, they might be able to share that. So I think some of these things are directly in development. As you know, our organization crosses multiple sectors. My expertise is in planning and park development, but we have real estate capacity, economic development capacity, workforce capacity, sustainability capacity, and we're looking for, again, synergies in all of these kind of departments. So again, I think to your question, my only answer is that CNP is new. You know, while the organization, the name is long-standing, I think many of the people that work at the organization and our mission now is much different than what it was in the past. And I think we can look forward to much more healthy collaboration in the future.
Thank you. And just my last point to the chair, I agree, but I'm one of the ones, show me the money.
I hope you can hold me accountable for that.
And that's just not just you, CMP too. They do all that running their mouths. And then we look up, ain't nothing being developed only in certain neighborhoods. And that is a problem that I am going to address as long as I'm an elected official and stand on that. But I appreciate you. I have no reserve. I do support this appointment as well.
Okay. The chair recognizes, do you have any, no further questions? So with that, there's no unreadiness from the council, so welcome as a new addition to be appointed to the City Planning Commission. We value you. We appreciate the time that you will be spending to help us move our city forward. Congratulations.
Thank you.